Welcome to the Live Free, Love Life podcast, where we discuss how to create more freedom so we can love our lives no matter what we're going through. Hello, my beautiful friends. Welcome to today's episode of the Live Free, Love Life podcast. Today, we're going to talk about how defensiveness sabotages your relationships. We've all been there. A simple comment from our partner suddenly feels like a personal attack. Our walls go up, our voice gets tense, and before we know it, we're locked in a verbal sparring match. But what if I told you that you have the power to stop these conflicts before they even begin? There is a good chance that the key to harmony in your relationships is mastering your own defensive reactions. Defensiveness is like a reflex. It happens so quickly that we often don't even realize we're doing it. It's our mind's way of protecting us from perceived threats. But here's the kicker. While defensiveness might feel like self-preservation in the moment, it's actually one of the biggest saboteurs of healthy relationships. Dr. John Gottman, a renowned relationship expert, identifies defensiveness as one of the four horsemen that predict relationship failure, alongside criticism, contempt, and stonewalling. He defines defensiveness as self-protection in the form of righteous indignation or innocent victimhood in an attempt to ward off a perceived attack. So let's think about this. When was the last time you felt truly heard and understood when someone responded to you defensively? Probably never. That's because defensiveness shuts down real communication. So why do we get defensive in the first place? At its core, defensiveness is rooted in fear. Fear of being wrong, fear of not being good enough, fear of rejection. It's our ego's way of trying to maintain our self-image and avoid feelings of shame or inadequacy. But here's the truth. Those fears, they're all in our heads. As Byron Katie so brilliantly puts it, the first act of war is defense. When we react defensively, we're essentially declaring war, not just on the other person, but on reality itself. So, how do we break this cycle? The antidote to defensiveness is surprisingly simple, though not always easy. It's taking responsibility. Gottman emphasizes that taking responsibility, even for a small part of the conflict, can stop the cycle of defensiveness and lead to a healthier outcome. Now, this doesn't mean that you have to agree with everything the other person is saying. It means being willing to look at your part in the situation, no matter how small. It means being open to the possibility that there might be some truth in what they're saying, even if it's not the whole truth. I will never forget the first time I really put this into practice in my own marriage. My husband made a comment about my behavior, and I felt that familiar defensive surge rising up inside me. There were good excuses, for my behavior. But instead of launching into a strong defense, I took a deep breath and I said, "You're right. I did that. That was not me at my best. And it's not the first time. I'm sorry. I'm working on it." The look of surprise on his face was priceless. Instead of escalating into an argument, our conversation turned into a productive discussion about how we could both make changes to create different results in our family. By taking responsibility for my part, I'd opened the door to connection instead of conflict. Another powerful tool in combating defensiveness is empathetic listening. This concept, championed by psychologist Marshall Rosenberg in his work on nonviolent communication, involves truly hearing the feelings and needs behind what someone is saying rather than just the words themselves. Rosenberg famously said, "Every criticism, judgment, diagnosis, and expression of anger is the tragic expression of an unmet need." When we can hear the need behind someone's words, even if those words come out as criticism, we are much less likely to react defensively. For example, if your partner says, "You never help around the house," instead of immediately jumping to defend yourself, try to hear the need behind their words. Maybe they're feeling overwhelmed and need support. Maybe they're feeling unappreciated and need acknowledgement. Responding with empathy, which might sound like, It sounds like you're feeling really overwhelmed. I can see how my not helping as much lately has added to your stress. Responding with empathy in that way can completely change the direction of the conversation. Another helpful perspective is to reframe criticism as feedback. Terry Real, a prominent family therapist and author, encourages us to own our part, not perfectly, but sincerely. When we can view criticism not as an attack on our character, but as potentially useful information about how our actions impact others, it becomes much easier to respond non-defensively. So, one of my clients, let's call her Sarah, she shared a powerful experience about overcoming defensiveness in her professional life. She told me, for years, I prided myself on my work, but I also dreaded feedback sessions. Whenever a client or a colleague offered criticism, I'd feel my heart rate spike and I'd launch into a flurry of explanations and justifications. It wasn't until I started working with Mindy that I realized how much this defensiveness was holding me back. She encouraged me to try a new approach. The next time I received criticism, instead of reacting immediately, I forced myself to pause and ask, what can I learn from this feedback? How can I use this information to improve? I won't lie, it felt uncomfortable at first, but the results were eye-opening. During a particularly challenging project review, when a client pointed out several issues with our campaign strategy, I took a deep breath and I used this new approach. Instead of defending our choices, I listened carefully, took notes, and thanked them for their insights. Not only did this lead to significant improvements in the campaign, but it also completely changed the dynamic with that client. They went from being one of our most demanding clients to one of our strongest advocates. This shift in perspective has been a game changer for me. It helped me grow professionally in ways I never expected, and it has led to much more productive and positive relationships with both clients and colleagues. Now, instead of dreading feedback, I actually look forward to it as an opportunity to learn and improve. Sarah's story is a powerful example of how reframing criticism as valuable feedback can transform not just our professional lives, but our entire approach to growth and self-improvement. So, one practical tool that I have developed to help my clients manage defensive reactions is what I call the NAT technique, N-A-T. This simple yet powerful approach has been a game changer for many people I've worked with, including myself. So here's how it works. Number one, name it. Recognize when you're feeling defensive. Just the act of naming the emotion can help create some distance from it. So that's the N. Number two, accept it. Allow yourself to feel the emotion without judgment. Remind yourself that it's okay to feel defensive. It is a normal human reaction. That's the A. And number three, take responsibility. Own your emotions. You're only feeling defensive because of what you're thinking, not because of what the other person said. Then choose to respond rather than react. Take responsibility for your part in the situation, no matter how small. That's the T, N-A-T. So here's how this might look in practice. Let's say that your partner says, "You're always on your phone. You never pay attention to me." Your immediate internal reaction might be defensiveness. That's not true. I pay plenty of attention to you. So, using the NAT technique, it might look something like this. Number one, name it. I'm feeling defensive right now. Number two, accept it. It's okay that I'm feeling this way. This is a sensitive topic for me. Number three, take responsibility. Internally, you might think, I'm feeling defensive because of what I'm thinking. So and so isn't making me feel anything. This is on me. Externally, it might sound like, I can see how my phone use has been bothering you, and I would never want you to feel like I don't enjoy our time together. I'll make an effort to be more present when we're together. Name it, accept it, take responsibility. By using this technique, you create space between the trigger and your response, allowing you to choose a more constructive way of engaging. One of the most counterintuitive aspects of overcoming defensiveness is embracing vulnerability. As Harville Hendricks and Helen LaKelly Hunt, creators of Imago Relationship Therapy, point out, the moment you begin to defend, you've lost your chance to connect. This is what I call the vulnerability paradox. The very thing we think will protect us, our defenses, is actually what prevents us from getting what we truly want: connection, understanding, love. Hendricks and Hunt emphasize that you are born to connect. Your defenses only block the connection you crave. When we can let down our guard and allow ourselves to be vulnerable, to admit our mistakes, acknowledge our imperfections, and express our true feelings, we create opportunities for deep, meaningful connection. I remember a client, let's call her Lisa. She shared a turning point in her journey with vulnerability in her relationship with her teenage daughter, Maya. So Lisa had forgotten about Maya's important dance recital, something she had promised to attend. Her initial impulse was to get defensive, to make excuses about how busy she'd been at work, to remind Maya of all the other events that she had attended in the past. But instead, Lisa took a deep breath and chose vulnerability. She sat down with Maya and admitted her mistake. I really messed up, she told her daughter. I forgot about your recital, and I know how important it was to you. I am so sorry I let you down. I feel terrible about it. Lisa shared with me how scared she felt in that moment, worried that her daughter would be furious and think she was a terrible mother. But to her surprise, instead of anger and judgment as she expected, she was met with understanding. Maya, seeing her mother's genuine remorse and vulnerability, opened up about how hurt she had felt, but also expressed appreciation for the honesty. Mom, Maya had said, I was really upset, but I know you didn't mean to hurt me. Thank you for being honest instead of making excuses. That conversation became a turning point in their relationship. By choosing vulnerability over defensiveness, Lisa created an opportunity for her and Maya to connect on a deeper level. They were able to have an open discussion about their expectations and feelings, and even brainstorm ways to ensure important events wouldn't be missed in the future. Lisa told me that this experience taught her the power of vulnerability in parenting. It showed her that admitting her mistakes didn't make her a bad parent. Instead, it made her more relatable and trustworthy in her daughter's eyes. This shift towards vulnerability and honesty strengthened their bonds in ways she hadn't thought possible. Okay, another powerful tool in overcoming defensiveness is self-inquiry. Byron Katie's method of self-inquiry, known as the work, involves questioning our stressful thoughts and beliefs. By challenging the very thoughts that drive our defensive reactions, we can often find peace and clarity. Katie suggests asking 4 questions about any stressful thought. Is it true? Can you absolutely know that it's true? How do you react? What happens when you believe that thought? And who would you be without the thought? So let's apply this to a thought that often triggers defensiveness. Let's go with, my partner is always criticizing me. So here's the questions. Is it true that your partner is always criticizing you? Can you absolutely know it's true? Are there any instances when they're not criticizing you? How do you react when you believe this thought? Perhaps you become defensive or withdraw. Maybe you start finding faults in your partner. And who would you be without this thought? Perhaps more open to hearing your partner's perspective, more relaxed in their presence, more able to respond calmly. The process of questioning our thoughts can help us see situations more clearly and respond from a place of understanding rather than defensiveness. Instead of immediately reacting to perceived criticism, we might pause and consider whether our interpretation is truly accurate. For instance, a client of mine realized through this process that what she perceived as constant criticism from her husband was often just his way of expressing concern or trying to help. By questioning her initial defensive thoughts, she was able to approach their interactions with more openness and less reactivity, which dramatically improved their communication. Remember, the goal isn't to invalidate your feelings or to say that your partner's behavior is okay when it's not. Rather, it is to create some space between the trigger and your reaction, allowing you to respond more thoughtfully and effectively. Overcoming defensiveness isn't a one-time achievement, it is a daily practice. So here are some strategies that you can use to cultivate non-defensiveness in your life. Number one, practice self-compassion. Often our defensive reactions stem from being overly hard on ourselves. By treating ourselves with kindness and understanding, we become less reactive to perceived criticism from others. Number two, develop a growth mindset. View challenges and criticism as opportunities for growth rather than threats to your self-worth. Number three, practice mindfulness. Mindfulness can help you become more aware of your defensive reactions as they arise, giving you the opportunity to choose a different response. Number four, seek feedback regularly. The more you practice receiving feedback non-defensively, the easier it becomes. So do it on purpose. And number five, celebrate your mistakes. Instead of trying to hide your mistakes, try celebrating them as learning opportunities. This can help reduce the shame and fear that often drive defensive reactions. Remember, as Terry Real says, defensiveness is the enemy of intimacy. The more you defend, the more you distance. By working to reduce our defensive reactions, we open ourselves up to deeper, more meaningful connections in all areas of our lives. So, here are some questions to consider. When do you notice yourself getting defensive, and what specifically triggers it? How might your relationships change if you responded to perceived criticism with curiosity rather than defensiveness? What steps can you take to practice self-awareness and identify the stories you tell yourself that fuel defensiveness? Ultimately, learning to manage our defensive reactions is about more than just improving our relationships. It's about liberating ourselves from the invisible chains that hold us back from true freedom and peace. Defensiveness acts like a prison, confining us within the narrow walls of our own ego and fear. It shackles us to old patterns, limiting beliefs, and knee-jerk reactions that keep us from experiencing the fullness of life and love. When we are locked in a defensive stance, we're not free. We're not free to truly listen, to grow, to connect deeply with others. We're not free to see situations clearly or to respond with wisdom and compassion. Instead, we're trapped in a cycle of reactivity, always on guard, always fighting imaginary battles. But here is the liberating truth. We have the key to our own freedom. By choosing to let go of defensiveness, we unlock the shackles that have been holding us back. We free ourselves to truly listen and understand others, opening up new levels of connection and intimacy. We free ourselves to learn and grow from feedback, accelerating our personal and professional development. We free ourselves to respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively, giving us more control over our lives. We free ourselves to see situations more clearly without the distorting lens of ego and fear. And we free ourselves to experience genuine peace, untroubled by the constant need to defend and justify ourselves. As Byron Katie wisely notes, when you argue with reality, you lose, but only 100% of the time. At its core, defensiveness is an argument with reality. It's an attempt to chain ourselves to a version of reality that exists only in our minds. By learning to accept reality as it is, including the possibility that we might be wrong sometimes, we break free from these self-imposed chains and open ourselves up to growth, connection, and true peace. Imagine the freedom of being able to hear criticism without feeling attacked. Picture the liberation of admitting a mistake without fear. Envision the peace of knowing that your worth isn't determined by always being right or perfect. This is the freedom that awaits when we break free from defensiveness. It's a journey of liberation, from fear to courage, from rigidity to flexibility, from isolation to connection. Each time we choose openness over defensiveness, we're not just improving a single interaction, we're expanding our capacity for joy, love, and fulfillment in all areas of life. So the next time you feel that defensive surge rising up inside you, remember, you have a choice. You can choose to remain shackled by your defenses, or you can choose the path of freedom. You can choose to be right, or you can choose to be free. The key is in your hands. Are you ready to unlock your shackles and step into a life of greater freedom and peace? Remember, it's not about perfectly eliminating all defensive reactions overnight. It's about progress. Each time you choose vulnerability over defensiveness, you take a step toward liberation, toward the relationships and the life that you truly desire. The journey to freedom begins with a single step, and your journey can start right now with your very next interaction. Live free, love life. Thank you for watching this episode of Live Free, Love Life. Please subscribe to my channel and don't forget to like, comment, and share. See you next time.